So, thank you very much for this beautiful film. We chose it as an opening because, of course, we liked it very much. And it raises so many issues and topics that were important for this Spotlight program that I would like to discuss with you. And first of all, my first question to you would be, in the beginning, you're linking the historical situation to your own personal situation or your history, your family history. Was this for you more of a personal story that you needed to tell, or was it a general issue that you wanted to address?
I think it started out as a personal story, which I guess seeds for this film have been planted over the years from my first visit to Israel, where my father was living. My parents were divorced in Morocco. They both remarried. My mother took us to Canada with my stepfather, and then my father and his new family went to Israel. So from my first visit to Israel and the situation that I saw my father and my sisters over there in, to growing up in Toronto in a society that perpetuated the narrative of the Arab as the enemy, and also, I guess, planted or tried to plant. It never really, registered with me. There was this dissonance between the discourse that I was growing up with and my own memories of Morocco, but at the same time, it was there enough that it took me 35 years to go back to Morocco. And then when I arrived, and with some trepidation, this was in 1992, handed my passport over to the customs person. And I do say with some trepidation, in 1992, I was not at all sure what the reaction would be. And his reaction was, "Welcome home, soyez la bienvenue chez vous." And so I think that was the beginning of a reflection about this. But at the same time, I was very involved in human rights work in Canada, and particularly by the mid-'80s and throughout the '90s, very involved in Palestine solidarity work. And so after that, whenever I went to visit my father in Israel, I would go to Gaza or to Ramallah or to Nablus, and became very much, very much aware of, and perhaps more conscious of both the similarities in those histories, or the parallels, if you want, between the Jewish Moroccan exile and the dispossession of the Palestinian people, but also became, as I started to, sorry, I'm rambling a bit, so I'm going to try to go back to your question. As I started to look at making the film, actually after my meeting with Simon Lévy in 1999, when he told me the story of Ilir, my initial project was really about Morocco and about learning why we had left and why so many had left. But the more time I spent in Israel, Palestine, the more time I spent working on the issue of Palestine, and the harder it became for me to make the film just about Morocco. And so from then on, it became not really, I lost interest in telling my own story. and became more interested in having the story told by those who experienced the exile to Israel, as I would call it. They were exiled to Israel, and the impact on the Palestinian population. Sorry.
Okay. So then my next question would be, if you yourself see that strong connection between the exile to Israel and the Palestinian question, what exactly is the question of identity then in your protagonist? Do you see some important issues here, or some sensitive points, like, for example, in the Israeli protagonist, in Shira, when she comes back to Morocco, she is warmly welcomed, but as well she's being reminded of her responsibilities as well. So where is the identity crisis here?
I think Shira's identity crisis was actually very temporary. It was a moment in Morocco where she kind of lost her bearings, but in fact she went back to Israel very reinforced, both in her identity but also in her commitment to working. And this is not apparent in the film, but actually because I think arriving in Morocco just brought out the ways in which her family had been betrayed and how she felt victimized. But in fact, Shira is a lifelong activist and has been, working with Palestinian women for many, many years. I mean, since the 80s, I believe. And so she went back to Israel, actually reinforced, which if I could have, I would have, followed her there and had a bit of a postscript of what happened, and so I don't think she was shaken in her dual identity, which she embraces today as much as ever. For me, it has never really been a big issue, because even though I went to Canada at age 10, I wasn't violently separated from my identity as a Moroccan. I've never felt that there was any conflict between being of Arab heritage and cultural heritage and being Jewish. But I think also what happened to me was that I had been working in Canadian politics in the 70s and perhaps even earlier, and at the time we were working on multiculturalism and equity and minority rights and so on, and it struck me one day that in fact this was not a new concept for me, that multiculturalism was what I had grown up with in Morocco. I grew up in a multicultural society where, for me, the Ramadan breakfast was as familiar as the Yom Kippur breakfast, but also Christmas was, as familiar to us as Passover, and so then I began actually to talk about my Moroccanness in Canada and about Morocco as being an example of a multicultural society without naming it as that. But I also at the same time, and I want to say this at this point, is that Morocco, and I didn't want to participate in that narrative about Morocco as being the exception. And so I became interested in knowing about the experience of Jews in other Arab countries, and particularly started to read people like Ella Shohat, who I have to say was, for me, a very big education about the Jews in the rest of the Arab world, and particularly in countries that were more directly in conflict with Israel. But I also learned that Morocco was not an exception. The only exception was that Morocco, because it was not directly at war with Israel, and for other reasons, I suppose, resisted the partition of Arab and Jew.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that the CCM, the Centre Cinématographique Marocain, supported the film as well. I don't know how the support really took place, but it would be interesting to know more about the supportive infrastructure in Morocco itself for an issue like that and a film like that. Can you tell us more about that?
I actually did not get financial support from the Centre Cinématographique Marocain. One, I didn't ask for it. It never occurred to me. It was only after the film was finished, I was invited to show it as a Moroccan, and I was very honored to be recognized as a Moroccan national, both by the Centre Cinématographique Marocain and by the Foundation for Moroccans Abroad. And so the National Festival of Morocco, which only screens films made by Moroccan nationals, and they're very particular about it, invited my film, but it wasn't finished. And so I still had some editing and sound issues with the French version. And so I asked if, since the festival is under the patronage, I guess, or is, I don't know, held by the Centre Cinématographique Marocain, I asked if they would help me just with, or give me access to some post-production editing. And so that was the extent of their help, but they were very helpful, very supportive, but also I wanted to acknowledge them mostly for having acknowledged my Moroccanness by. Now they got criticized, by the way, for it. It was a very funny festival where my film was shown with Ismail Ferrouki's film Free Men, about the saving of the Jews during the German occupation of Paris by the director of the Paris Mosque. And this was shortly after the election of the Islamist party, the PJD, in Morocco, and their newspapers criticized the Moroccan Film Center, and eventually got to the director fired for programming Zionist films. And apparently I was seen as a Zionist by the PJD. So, but the Moroccan Film Center did defend me, so acknowledge them.
Okay. I would like to hand over now to questions from the audience. Do we have? Okay.
And I've also seen a film a while ago about the same situation in Egypt, and I do see a marked difference because in Egypt you could still hear a lot of hostility, and also the very few Jews left in Cairo speak of hostility against them. So I really see there is a huge difference, in comparison with Egypt.
I can't speak to the current situation in Egypt, and also to the attitudes towards Jews in Egypt today. What I was saying earlier was that until 1948, the relationships and Jews in Egypt, and particularly in Egypt and Iraq, were I mean, their relationship was not very different not at all different, in fact. They were very much present in public life. They were present in the cultural life of the country. They were present in the political life. Many of them were part of the nationalist movements in both Egypt and Iraq and in Morocco. And so, as I said before, while today the differences, there are differences today, but I think that these are explained by the geographic location, also by the fact that Morocco has a very different history. Sorry, I don't know if that answers your question, but I was really referring to the historical relationship and not to the contemporary relationship.
Okay, certainly, but the people you were interviewing today were also actually really taking care of the synagogue, and you could feel that it's really very different from Egypt, now Egypt. So that speaks very much, I think, for the Moroccan people being able to differentiate between, their Jewish neighbors and, the Zionist shlichim who came and promoted the exodus to Israel.
Well, without being, overly romanticizing or idealizing Morocco, I would say that the people that I interviewed are perhaps not representative of the entire population of Morocco. There are certainly some tensions. But there is a very laudable effort on the part of both the Moroccan administration, on the part of the palace, and on the part of the population, the grassroots, to address those issues. And also what has been happening for the past few years in Morocco, which is really very, very interesting. I mean, I'm a little bit cynical on one hand, I'm a bit cynical about it, because I know that Morocco's self-interest is very well served by, preserving that relationship. But at the same time, there is something quite authentic and sincere about it from my experience. And I go to Morocco a lot, and I go everywhere, talk to a lot of people. There is a sincerity as well about it. But there has been an effort to re-educate Moroccans about the place of Judaism in Morocco, because it had been lost, really. The young generation that has not had a direct experience of living with Jews, and whose knowledge of Jews comes from, watching Middle East television or watching, reports of Israel bombing Palestinians. That's all they know of Jews. And so there has been some, anti-Jewish sentiment and some conflation of, Jewish and Zionist. But there has been an effort on the part of the authorities to, for example, to rewrite some history books, Moroccan history books, to include Jewish history, but also initiatives, some grassroots initiatives that have, one of them is a group started by university students in Fez called Club Mimouna, and they are young Muslim students who travel to Morocco, and they do something like what Zokhrot does in Israel. Zokhrot is this Israeli organization that, grassroots organization that is dedicated to naming and recognizing destroyed Palestinian villages, and to educating Israelis about the Nakba and the destruction of Palestinian villages. And in the same way, this young Moroccan group has been traveling to Morocco and educating young Moroccans in schools and in the villages about Jewish history. The other initiative that was quite interesting recently is on the part of the, I think it was a personal decision by the king, a personal initiative by the king to restore all of the Jewish sites in Morocco. This was a huge project. It was quite an extraordinary project. It was after the Constitution of Morocco was rewritten in 2011 to include Judaism as one of the founding identities of Morocco. And in fact, all of the synagogues and cemeteries, particularly cemeteries in Morocco, have been restored. But there is also some, political exploitation of that. It was announced, and the book about it was launched in Washington with, the Israeli and the U.S. ambassadors and the Moroccan ambassadors, and so there is both, the self-interest, but there is, I would say, there is also a sincere attachment to that history.
One last question, please. Oh, please.
I want to thank you for this film and that you have written this time of historical. And it is something we don't know very well, that Jewish and Arabian has lived so good together in this time. And for me, this film was aesthetically and human a good film. And I liked very much also the music, and that in the music you also you have seen this mixture of the different cultures. It was music, I think, parts of Spanish, of Arabian and Jew, and this mixture, which is possible in a wonderful music, that gives me also to know this story before, that people can live together without these problems we have today between Palestine and Israel, that should give us something like an ideal or something for to go on this way again. So it was very, very human, this film, and for this I will thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick response to that, actually. It's really interesting that you should hit on the one thing that I wasn't sure I wanted to do, which was to make a, this kind of very hopeful film, because I was very angry when I was making this film. I was very angry with Israel. I wanted to make an angry denunciating film, but Morocco is so terribly seductive, and this collaboration, and in fact, yes, once the music kind of invaded the film. I had not set out to make a musical road movie, but the music, once the music came in, and I guess my own nature is a very optimistic. I believe in human nature. I really believe, I'm not an angry person. And so against my intent, my original intent, the film did end up being more of a hopeful film. And thank you for picking up on that.
Just a piece of information. Did you get to show your documentary in Israel at all? And if so, what reactions did it elicit?
I'm afraid Israel and I kind of mutually boycott each other. I don't have a very good reputation in Israel. I'm very, pardon? BDS, but also some other things that I've done in Canada, particularly occupying the Israeli embassy during one of the wars. and so they have a lot of information about me. But at the same time, I won't go. However, I do want to find, independent, alternative ways of showing it, both in Israel and in Palestine. I do want to do that sometime, but it hasn't happened yet.